What happens when one of Hollywood's toughest, most no-nonsense action stars sits across from daytime television's most confrontational voice, and the conversation instantly derails? Before anything else, let's set the tone properly, because this moment did not unfold the way anyone expected. Before we dive into the video, please like, subscribe, and comment. Now let's get back to the video. You're about to see exactly how fast a calm studio can turn into a pressure cooker. This wasn't a playful exchange or a light disagreement. This was a slow burn that exploded right in front of the cameras, leaving everyone in the room frozen. Viewers thought they were getting a standard promo interview, but what actually happened felt more like an on-air showdown no one was prepared to stop. That morning, Jason Statham walked onto the set of The View, expecting business as usual. He was there to promote his latest film, shake a few hands, share a couple of laughs, and move on to the next interview. After all, this was nothing new to him. He had spent years doing press tours, answering the same questions, smiling through rehearsed banter, and keeping things professional. But what he didn't expect was for Behar to come out swinging the second the cameras started rolling. Joy opened the conversation with that familiar smirk, the one viewers had seen countless times before. She leaned in and said she had something on her mind, something that had apparently been bothering her. Then she dropped it. She claimed Jason's movies were basically violence porn and questioned whether he would ever make something with real substance. The words landed hard, and the energy in the studio shifted instantly. Around the table, the other hosts shifted in their chairs. Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and Sunny Hostin exchanged uneasy glances. This wasn't the warm, friendly introduction guests usually got. This felt different, sharper, and far more personal. Jason didn't raise his voice. He didn't roll his eyes. He leaned back slightly, lifted an eyebrow, and replied calmly. He explained that his films employed thousands of people, entertained millions worldwide, and often centered on themes like loyalty, family, and standing up for what's right. He questioned how that could possibly be reduced to what Joy had just called it. His tone stayed measured, but the room could already feel tension creeping in. Joy wasn't satisfied. She leaned forward, her voice taking on that familiar condescending edge. She brushed off his response and insisted that his characters just drove fast cars and punched people. She demanded to know where the art was, where the social message lived, and whether he felt any responsibility to use his platform for something more meaningful. Whoopi tried to jump in, clearly sensing the conversation slipping out of control. But Jason held up a hand and said it was fine. He wanted to hear more. His jaw tightened just enough for the cameras to catch it. The first crack in his calm was starting to show. Joy pressed harder. She accused his films of glorifying toxic masculinity and claimed his characters sent a terrible message to young boys. The studio audience fell silent. Even the camera operators seemed hesitant to move. Jason's publicist sat off stage, visibly uncomfortable, knowing this was going somewhere bad. Jason repeated the phrase, toxic masculinity, slowly, his voice dropping lower. He pointed out the irony of being lectured by someone whose career involved attacking people on television. Joy fired back instantly, claiming she was holding people accountable, not attacking them. Jason didn't flinch. He asked whether tearing apart someone's life work without understanding it really counted as accountability. Sarah tried to redirect the conversation toward the stunts in Jason's new film, hoping to defuse the moment. But Joy wasn't done. She insisted she knew exactly what his movies represented and accused him of selling fantasies that normalized violence and harmful stereotypes. She even suggested that an intelligent actor like him should know better. By now, Jason's hands were clasped tightly together. His breathing had changed. The cameras caught the tension in his shoulders. When he responded, his voice was quiet but sharp. He called it rich to hear someone dismiss millions of fans as incapable of understanding entertainment versus reality, even if Joy insisted she never called them stupid. Jason pushed back harder. He said the issue suddenly wasn't the audience, it was him. Because he made movies people actually wanted to watch instead of pretentious art house pieces that 12 people see. The words hit like a slap, and the atmosphere in the studio thickened instantly. Sunny tried to step in, but Joy cut her off, insisting she could speak for herself. She accused Jason of taking the easy money, repeating the same mindless action roles and wasting his talent instead of addressing real social issues. The challenge hung in the air, heavy and unmistakable. Jason's entire demeanor shifted. He wasn't smiling anymore. He wasn't relaxed. When he stood up from his chair, the sudden movement caught everyone off guard. He repeated the word mindless and said he was about to explain what that really looked like. Every person in the studio knew something big was about to happen. And that's where part one ends, because from this moment on, the conversation didn't just escalate, it detonated. Jason remained standing, his presence suddenly filling the space in a way no camera angle could soften. His voice stayed controlled, but there was an edge now that made everyone hold their breath. He said that Mindless wasn't creating films that entertained millions. Mindless, he explained, was sitting comfortably behind a desk and taking cheap shots at people who actually built something with their hands, their bodies, and their time. Every word landed heavier than the last. Joy snapped back, ordering him to sit down and accusing him of being dramatic. Jason didn't move. From where he was standing, he said, it looked like he'd been invited under false pretenses. This wasn't an interview, it was an ambush. He pointed out that she had spent the entire segment insulting his work, his choices, and even the people who supported him. The room felt frozen. Whoopi tried to regain control, asking everyone to pause and breathe. Jason didn't take his eyes off Joy. He said Joy clearly wanted this conversation, so they might as well finish it properly. Then he asked the question no one expected. He asked Joy what she believed she had contributed to entertainment beyond criticizing others on television every day. Joy's mouth fell open. She snapped that she had been in the business longer than he'd been alive. Jason interrupted calmly and said longevity wasn't the same as contribution. He talked about creating characters that inspired people, about films that brought families into theaters together, about stunt teams and crews who depended on the work. Then he asked again, quietly, what she had built. The other hosts looked toward the producers offstage, panic written all over their faces. This was spiraling far beyond anything planned. Sarah tried again to redirect toward Jason's upcoming projects, but Joy refused to let it go. She said she wanted to finish the conversation and accused Jason of confusing criticism with cruelty. Jason laughed, but there was no humor in it. He called her approach amateur psychoanalysis and questioned whether she really believed she was a hard-hitting journalist. He said she wasn't exposing truth, she was feeding off discomfort. Joy stood up then, her voice sharp and defensive, insisting she had spent decades asking important questions about culture and society. Jason shook his head and said her job was supposed to be about conversation and curiosity, not turning every guest into a target. He accused her of using the show as a personal platform instead of respecting the people who sat across from her. Joy was visibly shaking now, accusing him of being unable to handle criticism. He fired back immediately, saying he could handle critique just fine. But what she was doing wasn't critique, it was an attack dressed up as concern. He pointed out that she kept calling his work mindless, as if entertainment had to be miserable to have value. He said making people laugh, giving them an escape, and reminding them of good versus bad wasn't something to sneer at. Sunny tried once more to mediate, but Jason raised a hand and said firmly that this was between him and Joy. He said if she wanted to talk about responsibility, then they should talk about her responsibility to treat guests with basic respect, and to actually prepare instead of launching into insults. Joy's voice rose, insisting she knew everything about his career, his numbers, and his reviews. Jason asked her directly what exactly his crime was. Was it being successful? Was it making movies people enjoyed? Was it choosing projects that challenged him physically and creatively? Joy leaned forward and said his crime was wasting his talent and choosing the easy path instead of making a real difference. Jason stepped closer, his voice dropping low. He told her real problem wasn't his work, it was her bitterness. He said she seemed angry about her own fading relevance and took it out on people who were still building something. The audience gasped. Even the camera crew looked stunned. Joy sputtered, furious, reminding him she'd been on television for decades. Jason replied coldly that time on screen didn't automatically equal impact. He talked about fans inspired to train, families bonding over movies, and stunt performers whose livelihoods depended on films like his. For the first time, Joy had nothing to say. When she finally spoke, her voice shook. She accused him of thinking he was better than her just because he made action movies. Jason didn't hesitate. He said yes. He believed he was better than someone who made a living tearing others down. The tension became unbearable, thick enough to feel. Joy screamed about character and accused him of glorifying violence while real people suffered every day. She launched into a tirade about masculinity and responsibility. Jason cut through it with a single command, telling her to stop talking. The authority in his voice silenced her instantly. He began listing things she clearly didn't know. He talked about a stunt coordinator injured on set and how he personally made sure that family was supported. He mentioned charities he never advertised and children from Make-A-Wish whose faces lit up on his sets. He spoke about veterans who told him his films helped them cope and reminded them that good still fights evil. The studio was completely silent. Jason said she sat comfortably giving opinions about work she didn't understand while lecturing him about responsibility. He reminded her she'd never risked her body, trained for months, or worked brutal hours to entertain people. Joy tried weakly to redirect, insisting the message was the issue. Jason asked what message she thought she was sending by attacking a guest on national television. For the first time, Joy looked uncertain. She claimed it was just a discussion. Jason raised his voice slightly and said discussions don't involve insults, accusations, and dismissing someone's life work. Whoopi tried one last time to move things along, but Jason said no. He told the cameras that America deserved to see how Joy behaved when someone didn't quietly accept her treatment. Joy said he was overreacting. Jason replied that being humiliated for 40 minutes wasn't something you brushed off. He turned to the cameras and said this was what passed for journalism on daytime television. He accused Joy of confusing opinion with insight and said she didn't understand film, careers, or contribution. Joy tried to object, but Jason cut her off, listing every insult she had thrown at him. The audience was dead silent. Joy claimed she had the right to her opinion. Jason said he had the right to call it uninformed, hypocritical, and mean-spirited. He accused her of ambushing him before he even sat down and shaping a narrative where he was the villain no matter what. He shook his head and said the real tragedy was the wasted opportunity. She could have asked about craft, evolution, or creativity. Instead, she chose to be petty and cruel. Joy said he was being unfair. Jason asked what exactly she had been trying to do if not embarrass him. He said she tried to prove a point about masculinity by being more aggressive than any man dared to be on television. That hit hard. Joy's expression cracked for just a moment. Jason pressed on, saying responsibility meant decency, not humiliation. He began moving toward the edge of the set. Joy demanded to know where he was going and insisted they weren't finished. Jason turned back and said they were finished the moment she made it personal instead of professional. And from there, things only got worse, because what Jason did next pushed this confrontation into territory no one on that set could undo. Jason paused at the edge of the set, his hand already near the microphone wire, when Joy shouted after him that this was exactly the kind of toxic behavior she had been warning everyone about. She accused him of walking away instead of facing hard questions, of refusing to engage once things became uncomfortable. The accusation echoed through the studio, sharp and desperate. Jason stopped. He turned slowly, and the calm on his face was somehow more unsettling than anger. When he spoke, his voice was steady, almost quiet, but it carried through the room with brutal clarity. He said walking away from disrespect wasn't toxic. It was called having standards. He said engaging didn't mean allowing yourself to be verbally attacked under the disguise of discussion. Joy tried to regain control, saying she was passionate, not hostile. Jason responded immediately, saying passion didn't require cruelty. He said passion didn't need humiliation. And he said using social causes as weapons to tear people down didn't make someone brave, it made them careless. The audience shifted, clearly unsure which side to take anymore. Jason looked directly into the main camera and said this was what viewers rarely saw. He said audiences only saw edited clips and polite smiles, not what happened when a guest refused to play along. He said if standing up for yourself made you difficult, then maybe the system itself was broken. That line hit hard. Joy interrupted, insisting she was just doing her job. Jason replied that a job done without respect wasn't a virtue. He said challenging ideas was fair, but attacking character wasn't. He said calling someone irresponsible without understanding their work wasn't journalism, it was laziness. The word hung in the air like smoke. The other hosts stayed silent. No one jumped in, no one laughed, no one clapped. The show had lost all sense of rhythm, and everyone could feel it. Jason said something else then, something that visibly shook Joy. He said the reason she reacted so strongly was because she wasn't used to pushback. She was used to guests nodding, smiling, and waiting for the segment to end. Joy denied it, but her voice wavered. Jason continued anyway. He said power gets comfortable when it's never questioned. He said maybe this was the first time someone didn't play along, and that was why it felt so personal. The studio audience murmured softly, unsure whether they were witnessing bravery or disaster. Jason finally removed his microphone and placed it gently on the table. He said he didn't come to be praised, and he didn't come to be protected. He came expecting professionalism. What he got instead was hostility, dressed as moral superiority. He said he wouldn't be part of that. Not today, not ever. Joy stood up again, visibly flustered, insisting he couldn't just leave and control the narrative. Jason replied that the narrative had already been written the moment she opened with an insult instead of a question. He said all he did was refuse to accept it. That moment felt like a line being crossed. As Jason turned to leave, he addressed the other hosts calmly, thanking them for trying to keep things balanced. He said he knew they were put in an impossible position. Then he looked back at Joy one last time. His expression wasn't angry anymore. It was disappointed. That somehow made it worse. He said the saddest part wasn't the argument. The saddest part was that a platform with millions of viewers had chosen confrontation over curiosity. He said audiences deserved better conversations, not performative outrage. He said guests deserved fairness, not traps. And he said hosts deserved accountability too. Joy tried to speak, but the words didn't come out cleanly. The cameras stayed on her face as Jason walked off the set, the sound of his footsteps louder than anyone expected. The control room didn't cut away right away. The silence stretched. Seconds passed. No one knew what to do. For the first time in years, Joy had nothing ready. No punchline, no comeback, no lecture. Just a stunned expression as the reality of what had happened settled in. This wasn't a viral moment she controlled. This wasn't a guest she could talk over. This was a confrontation she didn't win. When the show finally cut to commercial, social media had already exploded. Clips were spreading faster than the producers could react. Some viewers praised Jason for standing his ground. Others accused him of being disrespectful. But almost everyone agreed on one thing. This wasn't normal television. And here's the part that made it truly controversial. Later that day, insiders claimed the segment wasn't supposed to air in full. There were discussions about editing it down, softening the exchange, and protecting the show's image. But once the clips went viral, it was too late. The audience had already seen everything. So the question isn't whether Jason went too far or whether Joy crossed a line. The real question is this: what happens when a guest refuses to play the role they're assigned on live television? And what happens when the person holding the microphone finally gets challenged instead? That day on The View didn't just expose a clash between two strong personalities. It exposed how fragile the balance of power really is when someone decides they're done being polite. And once that illusion breaks, there's no putting it back together again.